For literature to have publishing value within its own set of matrices, which means it's a matrix outside of a matrix rather than an unlimited matrix of sets, there has to be human impeachment for a derivation of Christianity. So, while Christianity has a revivalist sect within hell, hell is a forensic for understanding that the half life of molecules are human length, which means they have human value within the cosmos, the genome, and the orbit. So, this is how languages are vouched for from inert matter. Languages are the supplementing of values for the creationist ethics of giganomes. And gyroids are functioned just for keeping giganomes away from the ability to vouch for each part of its decimal place. So since under 3 decimal places a giganome exists, there is no more achieving of a number system. It is actually a letter of the syntax that it's under, which is the Dewey Decimal System. Not only is this the Dewey Decimal System, the decimal system is no longer alphabetical. It's in gyrations, which means it's not a language of mathematics anymore, of numbers. So since numbers exist on multiple decimals, not only does this happen to have a arch effect, this means that the numbers are exponents of exponents of exponents, which means they are actually part of a formation of a number rather than the number itself. So, this is explained through Christian hell by the Garden of Eden. In the Garden of Eden, man was the creator of the formal address to Congress as a library. So, as a library, people were malfunctioning to the state that they could no longer read. So, if reading was comprehension, not only does the second decimal take effect, the effect of the third decimal was misplaced on the fact that it no longer has a value. So not only does this read a comprehension of numbers, it's a censorship of ordinary people. So people get censored in books because not because they are illiterate, but because they are functionally loaded. So the loading of books is actually how screens are created. They are created through the binaryification of a 3-part unit for multiple displays. So this is how a letter is formed. One letter would be multiple DNA strands from one cosmos. And that is how a clock functions on orbitals. By orbiting each part of it on a relay that pictures the genome as if it is a vacuum. And these vacuums are retained on pretense that they are equated of stationary effect, which means they are geodesies of velocity. So if velocity of numbers exist, what makes the velocity of thought exist? Because thought is just as Christian as the velocity of numbers. In a setting that has multiple numbers in it, not only does the numbers have different values for the base 10 unit here, the Christian numbers are actually the pretense for the later numbers that come out, which means they no longer have base 10 but base 11, which means they are actually part of a unix rather than a apartment. So even if the base 11 system has multiple numbers, it's still infinite timelines based on base 10. So if a base 1 system is characterized, not only does this have literary value for base 10, it is the basement for each number to have order from. This is how Sanskrit is relayed on plus value. Plus value would be to add an additional load to a carrying capacity, which is a Unix. And Unix have the ability to have a faction of presence and a faction of censorship. So if the presence of the censor bar occurs, not only does the ability to relay information stop, the coding of the information is a barcode, which means it is no longer just a number, but a information source, which means it no longer says that it's part of a label of numbers, but the ability to censor numbers off the face of the planet. See, this happens because numbers no longer take value from the first source of the number, not from the second source. See, if there's multiple sources within the first source, not only does the original value change of the first source, the second source has to labor over each individual part of that value, which means it's taking away from the percentile tax of that individual number. So it's not as if the numbers change, it's as if that the third number is no longer part of this system because it's been extricated locally back into the second number through the third number. So that means the third number is a socket value rather than a production value for a steam. And these esteemed numbers are counted depending upon the local apparatus, which is the barcode itself, and is now part of a ordering effect of how each individual mime has displaced half digits as if they are single digits, and now are ordered back into the first value through the second value. And this is the meganome. So if a meganome has a placement of a value, not only does this deluxe the value, which means it sustains the value by itself, both values have to be sustained for the first and the second number so that the third number can have any meaning at all. So this means that not only do these two values have no value at all, they actually have a calculation value, which means it makes it into a letter rather than a number, which also means that it is part of a unit of thought rather than a pattern of creation, of numerology, which is called a unit.